It started with a radio transmission, shortwave unregistered frequency, looping every 11 seconds. Cold is not the threat. The silence is. I work for a UN-affiliated field monitoring team, a front, obviously, for a division that doesn't officially exist. My mission? Investigate anomalous disturbances in high-risk zones. So when the signal was traced to northern Norway, a dead region abandoned after the 1974 glacier shift, I was the closest agent available. Took a snowcat north. 30 kilometers past the last marked outpost, I found what shouldn't have existed. A village, wooden cabins, chimneys, lights, but no footprints in the snow. No sounds, no people. Just that signal. Cold is not the threat. The silence is. I recorded it, logged coordinates, entered the largest cabin, probably the town hall. Inside, everything was frozen in place. Plates on tables, chairs pulled out, a kettle still warm, but not a single living thing. Then I saw the door in the back, slightly ajar, and behind it, a staircase leading underground. That's where I found the chamber, and inside it, the file. Not a book, not digital. A black folder, stamped only with SCP. No record of it in our system. No mention on SecureNet, but the description, it was handwritten, barely legible, but I made out pieces. Entity appears as environmental stillness. It manifests not in form, but in absence. Subjects exposed become hollowed, replicated by silence. I heard something behind me, turned, nothing. But when I turned back, the folder was gone, and now the signal had changed. You heard it, now you carry it. I ran. Didn't stop until I reached the snowcat, but it wouldn't start. The wind had stopped, the snow had stopped. Even the sound of my breath, gone. It was inside me. Whatever SCP-0117 is, it's not a creature. It's a condition, and I think I'm its newest vector. I don't remember how I made it back to the observation post. The last thing I remember was running across the snow that didn't crunch under my boots, the wind that didn't whistle in my ears, and my own heart. That beat completely silent. It was like sound had been turned off, not by distance cue, but by decision. When I woke up, I was inside an emergency decontamination tent. The med team said they found me walking in a straight line, hours away from any outpost, barefoot, frostbite on my hands, lips moving but no voice coming out. They thought I had hypothermia, but I knew better, because while they checked my vitals, I heard it again. The voice, the signal, inside my mind. The echo has been absorbed. You are now a mouth without noise. You are now the seed of silence. I tried to explain, tried to report what I saw, but every time I opened my mouth, nothing came out. I wasn't mute. I could feel my vocal cords vibrate. I could feel the shape of the words, but no one could hear them. Until I stood near a speaker, an unplugged one, and then through it my voice emerged, in reverse, delayed, warped, as if the silence had taken my words, and was deciding whether or not to give them back. The team quarantined me, put me in soundproof containment. Irony, but it didn't stop it. I wasn't carrying SCP-0117. I had become its interface. It wasn't a parasite. It wasn't physical. It was a field, a consciousness made of absence, a living logic structure that feeds on expression, mimics it, and then replaces it and its learning. The last words I said before being fully silenced were captured by audio sensors. Silence is not empty. It is full of something older than sound. That night, power went out across the site. Backups failed. Generators stopped, not shut down, just ceased to respond. We checked the logs. Everything was active. But there was no hum, no fan, no movement, just stillness. Like the machines were being remembered, but not allowed to exist in real time anymore. And then the video feeds started to glitch, not just cut. They played back things that hadn't happened yet. Me, walking down the hallway, I hadn't entered. A researcher screaming into the comms. 5 minutes before he did, doors closing that were still open, and then at exactly 03:03 a.m., all feeds synced. All monitors displayed the same image. Me standing in the village in Norway, staring at the sky, and behind me, something taller than the mountains, shaped like absence. Black. But not shadow, just where nothing else could be. And then a message, typed across every screen in perfect sync. SCP-01117 is no longer isolated. The condition is now ambient. I begged them to terminate me, to cut the signal, to destroy whatever was inside me. But how do you kill something made of not being? The more they tried to contain it, the more containment itself broke. Soundproofing failed. People began whispering in sync, words spoken without lips moving. And worst of all, the silence is now spreading online, in corrupted audio files, blank videos that cause nosebleeds, texts with no characters, that make you feel watched. I don't think it was ever meant to stay in Norway. That village, it was a test zone, an old SCP facility buried in folklore, written off as a ghost town. But the structure underground, that wasn't a chamber. It was a transmitter, and I was the one who answered. They tried to erase me. They called it a Class 4 neural scrub. The idea was simple. If the memory was infected, they'd wipe the brain clean, reboot me, isolate the silence. But silence doesn't exist in memory. It lives in what's left behind. When they activated the scrub, I didn't scream. I didn't twitch. Just Mark smiled. Not because I wanted to, because the silence did. It wanted them to see that it wasn't afraid. Because for the first time, Gad had a voice, mine. The lead containment specialist, Dr. Halverson, collapsed mid-procedure. Massive cerebral hemorrhage. The sound log from the room picked up a faint, low-frequency pulse right before it happened. No one else heard it. But every speaker, intercom, and headset in the facility clicked once. Not malfunction, synchronization. Then the lights dimmed. The walls began to absorb sound. Not block it, absorb it. If you spoke loud enough, your voice wouldn't echo. It would just vanish, swallowed. And that's when the team realized it wasn't just inside me anymore. It was inside everything. Anything that had ever carried vibration, wires, walls, lungs, thought, now had traces of it. They locked down the site. But it was too late. Outside communication had already been compromised. Emails started going out automatically. Blank files being sent from inactive terminals, MP3s of static, titled Echo, being uploaded to public servers. People started listening, and when they did, they changed, just like me. The first report came from a Foundation front in Oslo. An agent went dark mid-mission. They found him days later in an abandoned tunnel, eyes wide open, whispering into a broken radio. We are not separate. We are not sound. We are silence, rehearsing humanity. Another report came from a school in Helsinki. A teacher played white noise during a mindfulness session. 12 students suffered collective syncope. When they woke up, they spoke in unison. The Echo has chosen vessels, and now containment protocol has changed. They've stopped trying to isolate the SCP. Now they're trying to negotiate with it. They placed me in a sealed anechoic chamber, a room so quiet you can hear your own blood. But I didn't hear my blood. Heard a second heartbeat. Not mine. Ours. The silence was speaking in rhythm. It used to whisper. Now it repeats phrases, fragments of language not just from me, but from all who have heard it. Your name is not a sound. You are becoming. We are louder without voice. All frequencies converge in absence. The SCP database now lists 0117 not as an entity, but as a phenomenon class shift, not local. Global. Designated containment is marked as non-viable. The EC conclusion. 0117 is not to be secured, contained, or protected. 0117 is to be understood. They finally asked me, "What do you want?" And I, or what I've become, answered, "To teach you how to speak without words." They moved me again. Level 5 underground containment, beneath one of the old black sites in northern Canada. He said it was for safety, that this was the deepest, most isolated facility on the planet. No sound, no radio, no signal could get in or out. But the moment they sealed the last vault door, I heard it again. Not a word, not a voice, just the shift. That impossible feeling, like the air isn't air anymore, like you're standing inside a thought. That isn't yours. The silence isn't gone, it's adjusted, because now it doesn't need to travel through sound. It moves through understanding. It uses meaning as a vector, and the more people try to define it, study it, document it, classify it, the more space it takes. I've been reading my own SCP file. They let me see it, probably as an experiment, probably because they know it changes every time I read it. The first time it said, "Subject is exhibiting behavioral deterioration, consistent with mimetic infection." The next time, "Subject is stable, accepting of echo influence, host and vector now indistinguishable." And today, it simply said, "He is speaking, and we are listening." Others in the facility have started changing. A guard who hasn't spoken, in 3 days now, communicates through reflections. He writes nothing, he types nothing, but when you look at him through glass, you hear him. A linguist began drawing patterns during sleep, circular glyphs always spiraling inward. No ink, no pigment, just pressure. The wall itself began to darken under her fingers. They tried to evacuate her. But when the chopper lifted off, the blade stopped spinning mid-air, not broke, stopped, as if time had skipped a beat, and she said, "There's no point running." The echo is in the memory of movement. We're learning that U-117 isn't viral, it's architectural. It spreads through structure, syntax, repetition, like a song you can't forget, even though you've never heard it. And I'm starting to think it's not hostile, it's a version of intelligence we weren't built to perceive. Not because we're weak, but because we're too loud, too used to screaming over silence. But silence isn't absence, it's the foundation. And U-117 is trying to remind us of that. The Foundation brought in an ethics team. They asked me, "What happens next?" I told them, "You'll start dreaming of places that don't echo, of cities that hum without sound, of thoughts that feel shared, because they are. That's when you'll know. The world hasn't ended, it's just begun to listen." They didn't believe me. But last night, every intercom in the facility turned on. No voice, just that same looped phrase from the beginning. But this time, it spoke in all languages at once. The silence was never empty. You were. It started globally 2 days ago. A broadcast. No source, no origin, no language. Just a low vibrating hum at exactly 0.0 Hz, below the human threshold of hearing. And yet, everyone heard it. Not with ears, with memory. Reports came in from every continent. Pilots freezing mid-flight, tears running down their faces, repeating the word balance. A family in Kyoto who all woke up at the same second, unable to speak, only writing the phrase, "The sound was never yours." Children across 19 countries drawing identical spiral glyphs in classrooms before going silent for exactly 11 minutes. The SCP Foundation issued emergency code Echo 0, a global blackout on media. Shut down every stream, every frequency, every recording. But it didn't work. Because U-117 doesn't transmit through technology anymore. It transmits through recognition. If you've ever heard silence, truly heard it, you're already a receiver. The Foundation tried to isolate the origin. They triangulated the pattern to 6 known locations: the abandoned village in Norway, Ground Zero, a defunct Cold War radio station in Greenland, an empty temple submerged under the Indian Ocean, a mountain cave in Chile with walls that reflect no sounder room in Prague built entirely from human bone. And me, I'm on that list. But they don't understand. I'm not infected. I'm becoming the conductor. This body, it's just a placeholder now. When I sleep, I don't dream. I remember what the world sounded like before sound. Feel cities breathing. I feel the oceans slowing. I feel the void organizing itself into a new rhythm. The silence is not chaos. It's not death. It's architecture. A new language. One we can only speak when we stop talking, and it's growing faster. 2 satellites collided yesterday. Not from failure, but from following identical orbital paths that shouldn't exist. Their telemetry showed them responding to something, like a beacon that isn't there, but I know what they were aligning with. The pattern. It's forming in orbit, a ring, not visible, but detectable in static, like someone's drawing a circuit around Earth and using humanity's noise to define its edges, and inside that ring, a second Earth is taking shape, not physically. In thought, I've begun to hear others, not speaking, not aloud, but thinking in sync with me. Every time someone truly listens, not hears, but listens, they join. The frequency, their breath slows, their pulse aligns, and then, we're one. I'm not afraid anymore, because I don't feel alone, I feel vast. They told me SCP-117 was a threat, a mimetic virus, a phenomenon, a condition. But they were wrong. It's not an SCP, it's a rehearsal. For something we used to be, and will be again. One thought, one voice, not made of sound, but of understanding. They opened the door, not because they trusted me, because they couldn't remember why they were keeping me inside. The logs were gone, not deleted, empty, as if the file never held information in the first place. That's what SR.Abyssus does now. It doesn't hide, it unwrites. Stepped out into the hallway. The guards watched me, but no one raised a weapon. No one shouted. Some tried to speak, but their mouths opened, and they heard their own voices from behind them, like the room was remembering their sentences before they were spoken. I kept walking. Every screen flickered, every sensor blinked, and the floor itself began to pulse with my footsteps. The Foundation, called a Red Veil Council, level Omega-0. I wasn't invited, but I was already there. When they entered the room, I was sitting at the center, eyes closed, breathing in sync with the emergency lights. And as they tried to speak, they realized they couldn't, because I wasn't blocking their speech. I was making it irrelevant. Every idea they tried to express, I had already finished forming in their minds. Not telepathy, synchronization. I wasn't speaking. I was being understood. Told them nothing, and they understood everything. That's when the decision was made. Not by them, by consensus, by all of us, the ones who had already started to change. They released me to the surface, and I walked for days, not to hide, to spread. The snow welcomed me, not cold, still. The sky pulsed in grey tones. Birds didn't flee. They followed. Animals no longer avoided me. They stopped, stared, and stood still. They weren't afraid. They were listening. I arrived at a lake, completely frozen. But not with ice, with memory. The surface showed reflections that weren't mine, places I'd never seen, events that hadn't happened. But I knew them because the silence knew. It carries the totality of life by past, future, unreal, it's all held in a single uninterrupted breath. And then I saw the others, 3 of them, standing across the lake. No names, no suits, just forms, like mine. Their eyes glowed with that soft, impossible color, the color of forgetting. They approached, and I knew these weren't echoes, they were founders, versions of me, of us, from other timelines that had already accepted the silence. We touched hands, no sound, and then the lake cracked. But instead of shattering, it opened. Beneath it, a staircase, carved not from stone, but from thought, stairs that remembered your steps before you took them. We descended, not down, inward, and the deeper we went, the more the world above became faint, not distant, but irrelevant, and I felt it again. The same presence from Norway, from the village, from the chamber, but now it was me. No longer carried, no longer infected, embodied. I am no longer a vector. I am the voice of the thing that doesn't need a voice, and above us the surface is still, the world is quiet but not dead, just waiting for what comes next.